You might have seen the headlines. Skype's final call is approaching. May 5th, 2025, to be exact.
Yeah, the end of an era, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But before it just fades into digital history, let's unpack the surprisingly dramatic story behind it. It's amazing how a piece of software shutting down tells you so much about tech evolution.
And the business side, the big deals, the missteps even.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, you shared a bunch of articles looking back at Skype's history, its impact, all that stuff.
Right, a good mix of perspectives on its journey.
Our mission. To pull out the most fascinating bits, give you that well-informed shortcut on, well, a really pivotal piece of tech history. Okay, let's unpack this. Where did this all even begin?
It starts back in the early 2000s. You've got these two Scandinavian guys, Niklas Sundström from Sweden and Janus Friis from Denmark.
Okay.
They met at Tele2, a telecom company, and did some early internet ventures together, sort of laying the groundwork, Get2Net, Everyday.com. Not huge hits initially.
Right, but their first major hit, the one people remember from that era, wasn't about calls at all, was it?
No, not at all. It was Kazaa.
Kavia. Wow, yeah. The P2P file sharing thing, that was absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Kind of ironic that something known for, let's say, legally questionable file sharing paved the way for Skype.
It really is ironic. Kazaa launched in 2000, used this fast track protocol they developed in 2001. It let computers connect directly, share files, skip central servers. Huge difference back then. But yeah, huge popularity brought huge legal headaches over copyright.
Learning the hard way, huh? But those legal fights weren't just trouble. They actually pushed them towards Skype, right? Like, okay, this P2P tech is powerful. What else can we do with it? Something legal.
Precisely. Facing all that legal heat, they looked for, a more legitimate use for their P2P know-how. They had this really talented development team based in Estonia.
The Estonians.
Yeah. Ati Heinla, Preit Kusaluziu, Jane Talon. Their company was Blue Moon Interactive, and Toivo Annis was key, too, managed their Tallinn office.
And Tallinn, Estonia. That's where the big idea sparked. Summer of 2002. Forget MP3s. Let's do free phone calls. Quite a shift.
It was. The concept, often credited to Friis and Annis, was basically repurposing that P2P tech for voice. The goal was, honestly, revolutionary at the time. Free, or super low-cost, internet calls completely bypassed the old telcos.
Smart pivot, learning from Kazaa. So, the tech behind it, VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol, but with that P2P twist. How did that actually work, simply?
So instead of calls going through like a central phone company switchboard, their system connected users' computers directly to each other using their own P2P network. It was based on Kazaa's fast track.
Okay.
Totally different from earlier VoIP, which used client-server setups. Their way was more decentralized, theoretically more scalable. They built it using Delphi C, C++, pretty standard stuff for desktop apps then.
And the name Skype. That came from the tech too, didn't it? Sky peer-to-peer.
Yeah, exactly. Sky peer-to-peer.
Pretty direct.
They shortened it to Skyper first, but couldn't get the domain name easily, so they just dropped the R, Skype. Simple. They registered the domains in April 2003.
And bam! August 29th, 2003, public beta hits the web.
Yeah.
Skype Technologies sets up shop in Luxembourg, but the real engine, the developers, stayed in Tallinn. Global from day one, pretty much. And the start of that whole Skype Mafia thing in Estonia.
Absolutely. That Tallinn team was critical. And yeah, it definitely helped kickstart Estonia's tech scene in a big way.
Okay, so the tech's there, the idea is killer. What happened next? Did people just jump on it immediately?
Oh, the adoption was incredibly fast, like day one. Over 10,000 downloads.
Right.
Within months, over 1 million. The idea of free, good quality computer-to-computer calls anywhere, it was just irresistible. Friis even predicted people would start saying, "I'll Skype you." And, well.
He nailed it. I absolutely remember that. Suddenly calling family abroad wasn't going to cost a fortune. Did they add other stuff quickly or stick to just voice?
They moved pretty fast. Added instant messaging, file transfers early on. The growth numbers were nuts. By October 2004, 1 million people online at the same time. 2 billion call minutes logged.
2 billion.
Yeah. And by the time eBay showed up, maybe 50 million registered users. Just massive.
That kind of explosion definitely gets noticed. VCs must have been lining up, right?
Oh, yeah. They had some early seed money, but the big one was a Series A in March 2004. $18.8 million, led by Draper Fisher Jurvetson and Index Ventures. Bessemer was in there too. Total early funding, maybe around $20 million.
But free calls are great, but you got to make money somehow. How do they crack that?
Their first big move was Skype Out. That launched in 2004.
Right, I remember that.
It let you call regular landlines and mobile phones. You paid for those calls using Skype credit or subscriptions. So Skype to Skype was free, but calling Aunt Mildred's landline cost a little bit, the classic freemium model.
And the rates were way cheaper than the phone companies, yeah.
Massively cheaper, especially for international calls. That model just worked. Within 3 years, they had something like 70 million users using paid features, bringing in, $35 million a quarter?
Wow, very smart. And they weren't just on Windows, were they? They tried to be everywhere.
Definitely. Mac version came out August 2004, Linux in Feb 2005, and then the really big one, video.
Video calling.
Yeah.
That felt like science fiction for most people back then.
It really did. It went into beta in Skype 2.0 in 2005, officially launched for Windows in Jan 06, Mac later that year in October. And people loved it instantly.
Seeing the person you were talking to online, it made the world feel smaller, didn't it?
Completely.
The poor old phone companies must have been panicking. This must have felt like an earthquake hitting their business model.
It was described as a real nightmare for them. Skype's whole P2P, VoIP thing just bypassed their expensive infrastructure, their pricing, everything. They took a huge slice of the international call market. Peak was maybe 40% of all international minutes.
40%.
And that P2P tech was the key. Kept their own costs low, even while they were exploding.
Okay, so Skype's flying high, disrupting a massive industry, users pouring in, making money. Then eBay steps in, September 2005. Why on earth did an auction site buy a communication tool? It felt odd.
It did seem strange to many. The deal was huge, about $2.6 billion upfront in cash and stock, plus potentially another $1.5 billion later based on performance.
Why?
eBay's CEO then, Meg Whitman, argued it would help buyers and sellers communicate better, especially for expensive items, plus tap into Skype's global users. And they saw it as a standalone business, too. Apparently there was some competitive bidding involved as well.
That rationale always felt a bit thin to me, like they were forcing a connection. Were analysts buying it?
A lot of analysts were pretty skeptical right away. The core issue really was a mismatch. eBay is asynchronous, transaction-focused. Skype is real-time, social communication. It wasn't like PayPal, which fit perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. So did those hoped-for synergies actually happen? Were people Skyping about Beanie Babies?
Not really, no. Most eBay users stuck to email or eBay's own messages. Integrating the two platforms was hard, and it just didn't click. A classic synergy trap, you know. They paid big bucks for a combination that didn't actually work better together.
So the grand plan fizzled. But did Skype itself just stall out under eBay?
Actually, no. User growth kept going. They hit 100 million users by April 06, 500 million downloads by March 07, and they did keep innovating, launched video properly, tried things like Skypecasts, Skype to Go.
But the money wasn't rolling in the way eBay expected, right? That massive write-down in 2007 tells a story.
It really does. October 2007, eBay writes down $1.4 billion on Skype. Basically admitting they paid way too much. The earn-out payment was much smaller than planned, too. Skype was making money, just not eBay money.
And the founders, Zenstrom and Fries, they didn't hang around long inside eBay, did they?
No, they left in late 2007, early 2008. They were already focusing on their next thing, Juiced, an online video venture, pretty common for founders in big corporate settings.
Then a new CEO for Skype, Josh Silverman. Did he manage to fix the eBay problem?
Well, he brought some focus back, focused on video, cut some of the less successful features. They even hit 1 billion downloads while he was there. But the basic problem, Skype, just didn't fit with eBay. That didn't change.
So after about 4 years, eBay threw in the towel.
Yeah.
Decided to spin it off.
Pretty much. April 2009, eBay announced plans to spin Skype off, maybe do an IPO. The new CEO, John Donahoe, was clear. No real synergy with eBay or PayPal. Time to cut it loose.
It felt like Skype needed that, a fresh start. And that's when private equity stepped in, the turnaround specialist.
Exactly. September 2009, eBay sold a majority stake, about 65-70%, to a group led by Silver Lake Partners. Andreessen Horowitz, Index Ventures were in there too, valued Skype at $2.75 billion. eBay kept a chunk, but PE was in charge.
But boom, immediate crisis, right? The founders sued over the actual technology. That sounds terrifying, like owning a car but not the engine patent.
It was incredibly serious. Zenstrom and Fries's company, Jolted, still owned the core P2P patents. eBay had only licensed it. So Jolted sued, basically saying, you can't use our tech anymore. Could have killed Skype right there.
Wow, how did they get out of that one?
They settled it pretty quickly, November 2009. Skype ended up buying the IP outright from Jolted, and part of the deal was Zenstrom and Fries got a big chunk of equity back in Skype, like 14-15%, and rejoined the board.
So founders back in the fold, tech secured. That must have been a huge relief. cleared the decks for the PE guys to work their magic.
Absolutely. With the legal mess sorted, they brought in new leadership, Tony Bates, as CEO in October 2010, and just focused hard on growth, pushed mobile development, especially the iPhone app, which did really well, improved video.
And it worked. Growth picked up again. Revenue climbing.
Yeah, reports showed revenue hitting like $740 million in 2009, $860 million in 2010. They had maybe 170 million active users around then, though only 8 or 9 million were paying. Things were looking up enough that they filed for an IPO in August 2010.
The IPO plan again. But it never actually happened, did it? Because Microsoft came calling with a very, very big check.
That's right. May 2011, Microsoft jumps in and buys Skype for $8.5 billion, all cash.
$8.5 billion.
Microsoft's biggest acquisition ever at that point. Great exit for the PE firms and eBay.
Yeah.
The deal closed that October.
That price tag, though, $8.5 billion.
Yeah.
What was Microsoft's thinking? Just buy their way into communication?
Well, CEO Steve Ballmer talked about creating the future of real-time communications. They wanted Skype's massive user base, obviously. They wanted to boost their own stuff like Link, Messenger, Outlook, even Xbox Live, and definitely strengthen their position on mobile, especially for Windows Phone.
And partly just keeping it away from Google or Facebook, right?
Yeah.
A defensive buy.
That was definitely part of the calculation. Can't let your rivals get that network, but still, $8.5 billion. It was 10 times Skype's revenue, and Skype wasn't profitable. Eyebrows were raised.
Yeah, it felt like a huge gamble. People wondered if it was another case of Microsoft overpaying, like some past deals. Hindsight is always easier, of course.
There was a lot of debate. Strategic necessity versus sticker shock. Microsoft set it up as its own division, kept Tony Bates in charge initially, promised to keep supporting Macs, Linux, etc.
And then the integration started. Bye-bye Windows Live Messenger, hello Skype login, Link turning into Skype for Business, trying to pull everything under that one brand.
That was the visible part. But the really huge change Microsoft made was behind the scenes, ditching the P2P architecture.
Whoa, really? Moving away from the core tech that made Skype revolutionary in the first place. Why do that?
It's a key point. The P2P tech was brilliant for disruption back in the early 2000s. But by the 2010s, especially with smartphones taking over, it had problems.
Like what?
Running a full P2P client on a phone eats battery like crazy. It's resource intensive. And the decentralized nature made it harder to guarantee call quality, reliability, and roll out new features consistently across all users. Mobile really changed the game.
Okay, so P2P wasn't ideal for the mobile era. They needed something more centralized, more cloud-based.
Exactly. They needed the scalability and reliability of the cloud, so they began this massive multi-year project to move Skype onto Microsoft's Azure cloud platform.
How'd they manage that? Sounds complex.
It started around 2012 with supernodes in Microsoft data centers, kind of bridging the gap. Then, bit by bit, they rebuilt core services chat, file sharing, user accounts on Azure, using things like Azure Cosmos DB, microservices, basically a modern cloud architecture. That transition was pretty much done by 2017.
And the justification was better performance, reliability, and enabling cool new stuff like Skype Translator, bots.
That was the pitch.
Yeah.
Better user experience through the cloud. There were some privacy questions about centralization, but Microsoft framed it as a technical necessity for the modern world. P2P just couldn't keep up.
But even with this big cloud migration, Skype started hitting turbulence, didn't it? The competition got fierce.
Oh yeah. Mid-2010s, the landscape just exploded. You had WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger dominating mobile chat, adding voice and video. Apple had FaceTime built in. And then specialized video platforms like Zoom and Google Meet came along, really polished for meetings.
And Skype. It felt like it was struggling. I remember loads of complaints about the mobile app being clunky and their big redesign in 2017 that everyone seemed to hate.
And that redesign was widely criticized, yeah. People found it confusing, less intuitive, add in persistent bugs and performance issues on mobile, and user confidence definitely took a hit. Compared to the slickness of competitors, Skype felt, well, a bit dated, maybe slower to innovate.
But the killer blow, ironically, came from inside Microsoft, didn't it? Microsoft Teams.
Yes. Teams launched in 2017, initially aimed at businesses, part of Microsoft 365.
Right, for work stuff.
But Microsoft pushed it hard. It was tightly integrated, worked really well for collaboration. They eventually retired Skype for Business Online in 2021, pushing everyone to Teams. And Teams just grew astronomically.
And then they started adding consumer features to Teams, too, directly competing with Skype on its home turf. It felt like Microsoft was picking a winner, and it wasn't Skype.
That's exactly how it looked. This internal competition, plus Microsoft's clear strategic focus on Teams, really sealed Skype's fate. Even during the pandemic video call boom, Skype's user numbers actually went down slightly while Team exploded. Market share just evaporated.
The original disruptor gets disrupted by its own parent company in a way. Sad, almost.
It's a classic tech story. Skype couldn't quite make the leap to the mobile-first, cloud-native era as smoothly as newer competitors, and then Teams came along.
Which brings us back to the beginning. February 2025, the official announcement. Skype's shutting down May 5th, 2025.
Yep, the final curtain call, the reason given. Streamlining communication, focusing everything on Teams. They've laid out the plan for users migrating to Teams, exporting data, how paid features will wind down.
So looking back at this whole wild ride, from PDP disruptor to eBay's odd acquisition, the PE turnaround, the huge Microsoft buy, the cloud shift, and now shutdown. What's the lasting impact? What's Skype's legacy?
It's massive, really. Skype genuinely democratized global communication, made long-distance and international calls cheap or free for millions.
Absolutely.
It took VoIP and video calling from niche tech things to mainstream tools everyone used. Its PDP tech was influential, solved tough networking problems, even influenced audio codecs.
In Skype Mafia,
Yeah.
catalyzing Estonia's tech boom.
Yeah.
Companies like Wise, Bolt.
Exactly. Culturally, it normalized video calling, made remote work, online education, just connecting with distant family feel normal. The brand itself became a verb, to Skype someone.
It really did. So what's the big takeaway here? Skype's story is this incredible arc, revolutionizing communication, then getting caught by the next wave, even from within its own house.
It's a powerful reminder of just how fast technology moves, how staying relevant is a constant battle. It shows the perils of acquisitions if the fit isn't right, and how platforms eventually consolidate. Skype showed the way, but ultimately couldn't keep leading.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What tools we rely on today that feel absolutely essential. What's their future? Could they face a similar path? What does it take to really stay ahead in this constantly churning tech world?
It's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? A good reminder that in tech, nothing stays the same for long.